glad to have you to the community briefing with we have a great guest today, and he's one of our regulars, but he brings so much information to us, and he also refers some incredible guests to us as well. So he's a family member, and so we're so happy to have Mr. Banner here today, joining us. We know we don't have Greg today; he's out there doing great business. But he'll be back next week, and so you got the three of us, the team, the powerful team. Myself, I'm Crystal Mitchell, um, uh, a co-director of Recycling Black Dollars and inspiration for the community briefing. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna let you. Robin is going to introduce herself, and Mr. Stephen comes in. You guys know at the back end of us. Welcome, Robin. Over to you.
We're just a little off kilter because Greg is generally running this stuff, and it makes it a lot easier when there's a tag team going on. Hey, it's Robin Billups with the Billups Group. I am a consultant working with folks to help them get to a strategic framework for the goals and aspirations that they have. It's my delight to be one of the co-hosts for this exceptional program that we do. I'm very proud of what this organization does. And one of the things that I ask you guys to do is we have to really start paying attention, and we really have to be actively engaged. We can no longer sit on the sidelines. As Crystal said, if we're not invited to the dinner, get you a chair and bring your chair with you, and be at the table. We have to do this because this is a generational problem that has been coming, and now it's here. And so the guest we have today is going to help us look at what the marketplace looks like, but more importantly, every week, every Thursday from 11 to 12 o'clock, the community briefing is here to illuminate, to educate, and to provide resources. So my whole thing is you're not going to be around us and say you didn't know. Now, what you do with the information is on you, but we're always going to provide you with some solid information. We ask him if you have other folks that you'd like to invite as guests, please send us an email and we'd be glad to get them on board. So thanks again for coming, and I'm going to kick it. I'm going to actually here we are. We're just so off. I'm going to do the introduction to our speaker for the day.
Wait a minute, before you do that, let me just make sure we cover our supporters.
That's right. I'm sorry.
And then we'll be back to that. And then Mr. Stephen is our producer. He's amazing, and we couldn't do this without him. Thank you so much, Stephen. And we can't do it without you guys for coming and visiting us every Thursday. As I said earlier, I am the inspiration behind the community briefing. It is here for the exact reason Ms. Robin said, and we will continue to be here. And it's imperative that we know and engage with what's going on. At the core of all of this nonsense or craziness or insanity that's going on. We do live in this country, and we paid a big price to be here. And so we want to fight for a country that our ancestors fought for. So we do have to engage. And if not for yourself, then for your children. This platform is monetarily powered and sponsored by Recycling Black Dollars and the BBA, as well as monetarily sponsored by the Los Angeles LDC, and we so appreciate Mr. Banner, and the Southern California Edison, Wells Fargo Bank, PCR, SoCal Gas, Urban Excellence. Thank you guys all so much for making it possible for us to be here every Thursday. So with that, now, Robin, you can introduce our illustrious guests.
It is my personal delight to introduce my big brother. This guy he's a straight no chaser kind of person. And if you're real and serious about life, he will engage you. And if not, you might get dismissed. This is Mr. Michael Banner. He's the president and CEO of the Los Angeles LDC, driving community development finance. He's been doing this for over 30 years with the LDC. The mission is centered on driving economic growth in underserved communities. By forging strategic partnerships and developing innovative financial solutions, the team supports enterprises in distressed areas while addressing systematic challenges. What I love about Michael has the courage of any lion. He will question and press the issue until an answer that makes sense is given. And so I'm not going to talk a lot about him. He's going to tell us about his background. He's going to tell us how he got started. And he's certainly going to tell us some things that we need to do to move forward. So without further ado, Mr. Michael Banner.
Well, good. Yes, I can still say good morning to everyone. And Robin, thank you for that uh, nicely presented introduction. Uh, Great to see some new faces that I'm not uh, connected with yet on the call. So, what I'd like to do today, and what I'm going to try to accomplish, I don't have that many slides. I wanted to keep it kind of simple and open the door for more conversation about what people think are going on around this particular idea that I've actually been trumpeting for probably not close to 2 years. And it's getting to the point where things are starting to come together. So today, for those of you who have some idea of what a mentor protege program is that's used in procurement, I thought about, is there a way to take that same structure and concept and move it into one of the perennial problems that we talk about all the time is access and deployment of capital? And could a mentor protege program model be successful? And so I'm going to share with you some of the thoughts that I have about that. If you could advance to the next slide.
Mm-hmm. Oh, let's see what's happening here. Hold on. Okay.
So for those of you who don't know me and why I do all this stuff, I've been doing this since the late 70s. I'm a former banker, spent a decade in the banking industry here in LA, and I'm a native of LA. And I have run this nonprofit finance company since was asked by Dick Reardon when he was the mayor to come in and fix this thing because it wasn't doing anything. And that was in 1995. And I don't know. Sometimes I think of myself as a community finance crackhead, so I can't get off of this stuff. But there's a lot of work to be done. And, I tell people all the time that I have done so many things, I've forgotten what I've done. But in summary, I know I've delivered over $1 billion worth of capital into diverse communities and primarily to diverse borrowers. Um, and although that's a mouthful, and you think $1 billion is a lot of money, which in some cases it is, it's really, uh, for the size of the opportunity, a very small amount. And I think we are pressed with think about new ways to move forward because we get one roadblock put in front of us after another. And one of the things that I've always tried to do is to take existing tools and show how they can be applied to the space that work in. And this mentor protege discussion is along that line. If you want to advance to the next slide. So I'm going to do like a who, what, when, where, and how, why kind of presentation here. And if you don't know what a mentor protege model is, it's something that's been around for a while, quite frankly. I'm not talking about anything new. And I'm really talking about how do we take things that have existed and change how we use them to solve a problem. And a protege program model, we all know what it is because we've all mentored people. And so I'm saying let's take those kind of characteristics and put it into a finance model where we try to use these relationships to improve the flow of capital. And as you can tell from this slide, there are probably at least 10 federal agencies that have some form of this. Um, Department of Defense, I found that they launched theirs in 1990. And if you think about how big the defense industries is and how many billions of dollars go out every year, every year, uh, that something like this is could be helpful in getting folks who want to get into that channel and work in that industry. But it's not easy to do, and especially when you start talking about large dollars. Most people might know about the SBA and its 8A program, which was revised in 2016 to have it be thought about more contemporary in terms of who gets targeted and how do you get resources to them. And Department of Transportation, which I think is kind of relevant to this particular application I'm talking about because of the partners that are involved in here. If you want to advance to the next slide. So when would this happen? Um, little background, 2015, LA Metro decided that in addition to doing the work that they're doing to put uh, the K line in, they thought about, well, why don't we have a transit-oriented communities strategy? So you just don't put the train in and have it run up and down the tracks, but how does that affect the entire community? And so transit oriented development was the first buzzword that we would hear. And then it turned into, well, how do we look at the neighborhoods that these infrastructure systems go through in a more holistic manner? And that's when the notion of transit-oriented communities popped up. In that time, Metro set aside a $500,000 to work on this strategy. And needless to say, we're talking 2025 now. And as I'm telling you here, this might get a launch in 2026. Significant amount of time has passed, and the $500,000 went no place. In fact, it bounced around from Metro to the county and then ended up coming back to the county, coming back from the county to Metro. And I was asked, what I thought about what could be done there. And I was asked by um, Jackie Dupont Walker, for those of you who might know her, who sits on the board. And I've known and worked with Jackie for decades. But it's like, I said, Jackie, nobody's going to fool around with $500,000, especially if you want to have significant impact. That might work for one small business or a collection of small businesses. But if you want to have a impact in transit corridors, especially something like the K line, you probably need to be talking about a minimum of $5 million that Metro was willing to contribute to that. Ultimately, that they got that done. They were able to come to the table and say, okay, Michael, we're willing to put up $5 million. And then at the same time, because of the work that I've been doing with the state treasurer's office on the Small Business Credit Initiative, which is $1 billion for California to do work around small business, I put those two together, and then that's turned into a potential $20 million fund, which is the lead investment from effectively two public entities that is supposed to be levered 5 times. So you could create something like $100 million fund. Uh, and that sounds like a big number, but it isn't in some cases. If you want to go to the next slide. So we're talking about 2026. Maybe I can retire because I've gotten this done. That's the plan here. My selfish motivation. So if you do something like this, the question is where would it be done? And because the lead agency in this is a transportation agency, they're very geographically driven. And so with them putting this money out, they decided that they would make a priority in two particular areas. And one is the K-line corridor, Crenshaw. And there are maps here for both of these. And the other one is around effectively the investment they made into regional connector in Little Tokyo. So these are the two targeted areas where Metro would like to see impact in an economic development program. In this case, the program I'm talking about is a lending platform to help drive capital to transactions for small businesses in these two geographies. And those are pretty sizable geographies if you think about it. So you have Little Tokyo, which is in the kind of the downtown confluence, and then I would characterize Crenshaw as effectively kind of like the dividing line of headed to the west side, and we see the west side coming back to Crenshaw. So there's an interesting dynamic that's going on with that. And when I looked at this and I took a look at, because I work with a lot of banks and I look at banks in a lot of different ways that maybe some people don't. But these two geographies, there are over $6 billion of deposits in those two communities. Typically, a bank, even a big bank, would kind of leverage their deposits at least 6 to 1. So if you have $6 billion worth of deposits, it's not hard to think about. We should be looking for $36 billion worth of lending or capital deployment associated with effectively your deposits. I mean, these deposits come from people who live and bank in the area. Smaller banks, if you use that the community bank business model, their leverage is sometimes probably closer to 8 or 9 to 1, in some cases 10. So the smaller institutions do a lot more lending with the deposits that they hold. And in the K-line corridor, 6 banks that are actually 7. A new bank is opening, just opened up. Columbia Bank
Yay.
from Washington is there now. So I always say that the Crenshaw corridor is not your prototypically underbanked corridor. It actually has quite a few banks, and most of the banks that we know are there. So the tool is there. Now, how do we get and make it more actionable? And in the Crenshaw corridor, I think the new numbers which just came out in June for June 30th is probably like $1.7 billion in deposits from Adams to Slauson is where those banks are located. So it's not a huge territory, but it's a significant concentration of banks and deposits. The Little Tokyo model is actually got more deposits. I think Little Tokyo is closer to 4 billion, or maybe a little more than 4 billion, of which probably the leading market share player there is Cafe Bank. They
Yep.
have more deposits than anybody else. Uh, and in the Crenshaw quarter, it's actually One United Bank has the largest share of deposits, which I didn't know until I looked at it, and I was actually a little surprised. But they have more deposits than JP Morgan Chase or Bank of America or Wells Fargo, on a bank by bank basis. So that's kind of where we want to do this. And the reason I say that's important to do it here, because that's where the money is. It's
Mhm.
already there. Okay. You don't have to necessarily go out and get it to come in. It's like, what are you doing with the deposits that are sitting in my checking account at JP Morgan Chase or City National Bank, Co-America Bank, Wells Fargo, B of A. So if you want to advance to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
So then I've given you some sense of the geography. Okay, so how do you do something like this? And for those of you who have been around the community briefing, you've heard me talk about this kind of model before. And it's the model that I still think is going to work today. And basically, you're going to end up with, if you look at the right side of this graphic, that's the target. How do you generate lending activity, investment activity to small businesses in these geographic corridors? The center of it shows an entity, which is called an MDI CDFI capital fund,
Mm.
is how do we aggregate capital someplace that's responsible for dispersing it? Now, I will tell you, having been a banker, in a perfect world, that should be a bank.
Mhm.
They should be making loans. And in some cases, they do. I just don't know that we can all agree that there's a lot of this activity by banks in the corridors that are under question here. And so does that mean we have to come up with a new model or a new entity? Yeah, kind of, sort of. But I've always believed that there's in this case, there's no CDFI unless
Mhm.
you're a bank or a
Mhm.
CDFI credit union that's going to be able to raise a lot of money for this because you do not take deposits. Deposit taking institutions have a natural reason to take deposits and make loans. And for those of you who understand the complexion of the CDFI industry, the largest CDFIs are CDFI banks and CDFI credit unions. And the smaller ones are CDFI loan funds, which we typically hear more about. And I used to be one. So, and I know how hard it is to raise money and deploy it. Uh, but my money would come from banks. So they already have it. So then the question is, how do you make them educate them on here are the right folks in these areas that we think you ought to be lending the money to, and the people who are there should be going to the banks. So we probably got, again, an interim step here where we need to show through some other vehicle that it works. I did this in 2004, where I created my own $10 million fund, and it funded loans on and investments on Crenshaw. All the investors, which are primarily big banks, got 100% of their money back and made 5.5% cash on cash return.
Mm.
So it wasn't philanthropy, it wasn't grants. It was, this is your business. This is what you can do if you look for the right people to make loans and investment to. So it's in your self-interest. And if you own bank stock, like I do, I'm looking for, what are you guys doing in my community with
Mm-hmm.
my money that I, as a shareholder, have? Because I know it works.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular model shows you really three things. The small businesses on the right who are the recipients of loans and investment. The entity, which is in this case is called a minority depository institution, which is an MDI, and CDFI. And this is a fund where capital gets aggregated up. And to the very left, you have somebody who's managing the fund, a fund manager, and then you have investors. In this case, this shows two classes of investors. As I said earlier, there's the metro money that's available that's been leveraged with the state's small business credit initiative. So that bottom box where it says LA Metro subordinated investors, that's that capital that should be used in this fund to make everybody else who puts money in this case, the senior investors, feel like that they have credit enhancement to protect them from loss.
Mm-hmm.
In my view, you cannot show that there's a whole bunch of losses in these communities. I've never seen any data that says that, primarily because there's not a lot of lending activity and investment activity that goes
Mm-hmm.
on. So if you don't do it, you can't lose it. And if you spend any time looking at whoever you bank with, I encourage you to go and look at their investor relations page and just pull open their financial statement. And you're going to see a line item in there on their balance sheet that says uh, reserve for loan losses. And in some cases, depending on how big the financial institution is, that can be trillions of dollars.
Mm.
Even in a small one, it could be hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you ask yourself, okay, if it's a bigger bank, which I feel more comfortable in banking with, if that's your rationale, how much of that loan loss reserve is attributed to my community? Maybe not much, because you only reserve for things that you think are going to be bad and that might happen. And if they're not making any lending decisions in your community, that could mean they don't think it's an acceptable risk. And all I just say, well, we need to prove that. And if there
Mm.
are some risks that shouldn't be taken, we all need to understand what they are, and let's not do that. But there are some risks that should be done because businesses can be successful. We need to kind of double down and put more effort into that because that's what will change communities. Next slide.
Mm-hmm. Hold on, okay.
So, why would you want to do this? And you can see from these five bullets, there are at least minimum of five reasons to do it. And like the first two are pretty, the first one is pretty generic. Everybody knows that small businesses need to have capital and that deployment needs to improve. Most of the time, access to capital is always mentioned as one of the number one things that are holding down investment into small businesses. So that's a given. What I can tell you is in 2020, the Office of the Controller of the Currency, which that's OCC stands for, they launched a program called Project Reach, which was an attempt to get bigger banks to work with smaller banks to try and create some synergies between the two. I was involved in that. Well, I'm waiting for him to do something else again, but that's something that I know is hard to do because size matters.
Mm.
Other thing here, and the third one is that minority depository institutions, which are typically smaller regulated banks or credit unions, they can offer solutions to small businesses that are continuing to run up against these barriers, which maybe that reside in bigger banks. It's like, who wants to take the time to work on a loan when, I don't make my bonus if it's, I need 50 grand in a bonus for me, not what the business needs. So the economics of lending and investment get tied to the institution and what its business strategy might be. Fourthly, CDFIs, like small businesses, also require technical assistance. So the fact that if you create this mentor protege model, and I'm suggesting that it is a minority deposit institution or community bank working with a local CDFI is the model, then the local CDFI can learn from the larger financial institution, maybe share some systems, maybe get some synergies out of that. And it'll make it easier for them to help the bank find customers
Mm.
because you're basically going to turn maybe the CDFI into somewhat of an extension of your marketing strategy.
Yep.
Because, we know people that they don't know.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. And we typically know a lot more about them than they will know because we don't have to have them fill out a bunch of information and application and stuff. No, we see them all the time. We've known them for years. That is one of the advantage. And then finally, I would say because of the presence of Metro and there's money from the state, there's a growing interest in how place-based economic development can improve outcomes. And place-based economic development requires capital. There's not much that doesn't require capital, quite frankly.
Mm.
The question is now, what's the kind of capital that can take a little bit longer view because you're trying to develop something and developing through a place-based economic development strategy means simplistically the Crenshaw Corridor and Little Tokyo are important places. We want to see more development and development that has economic principles tied to it, which is generally, in my view, income creating activities. Because without income, there will not be any development and you'll have a much harder time continuing to attract capital. I mean, money is looking for money to coalesce with and get bigger, get fatter. That, generically, that's a pretty simple way to put it, but that's the reality is what happens. Money, there's a rapper that has a saying, a lyric that don't make money, it don't make sense. And a lot of times people won't tell you, they don't think your idea won't make money, but that's what they're thinking. And that's when they go, well, they'll find another reason, but they won't tell you your idea doesn't make any sense. They'll basically give you 35 pages of forms and stuff to fill out, hoping you get tired and go away. So you have to try to deal with those realities. Next slide.
I think that's your last slide,
That's the
isn't
last
it?
one? Okay,
Uh-huh.
cool.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do for me is I'd like to hear feedback on this because ideas without a constituency get put on the shelf.
Mike,
And if I am suggesting things that could be improved with your input, or you want to help become a disciple and and cast out that this is a good idea, why aren't we doing it? I'd appreciate hearing about that. And also I'll answer any questions that anybody might
Michael,
have about this.
again, you've given us what I love about the way you share is you speak layman's terms. You speak layman's terms. And as you were speaking, I heard a lot of words that a lot of people have heard, but you always you always present so that, as my mother would say, that a fool could understand it. And one of the things that you said that I really like is looking at that investor relations report. These are the kinds of things that we shy away from because we think it's too big, it's too this, it's too that. But what you've done is given us a template on the steps that we need to take. And so one of the other things, I really like the idea of a mentor protege program. There are a multitude of them in the construction industry, multitude. And so folks who are in the trades who don't participate in those, then they wonder why they can't get become a subcontractor to a general contractor. So what you're saying is you participate in this mentor protege program, it automatically presents you to the bank. It automatically gets you ready to do business with the bank. And if there are shortcomings, if this is what I heard, then the CDFI piece to it is where the technical assistance takes place. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, and I think in a very pointed way, because of the involvement of Metro, they own this subcontracting vendor management kind of activity. And I know over the years they've heard from the folks who want to do business with them how hard it is.
Yeah.
And they've also heard that access to capital is a significant consideration. So I would say I'd give them credit for trying to move closer in that direction where they try to meet people what they are by putting some of this capital that they control and try to leverage the investment. But you know, everybody can learn, and you usually pay for the stuff you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I think a mentor protege program, it's not unique. And we've all worked with people that helped us get better at what we do. And this is just an example institutionally, how do we do that?
That's excellent. I'm asking everyone if you want, you can actually raise your hand on with the system, and we can call on you. And otherwise, I want to. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, again, I knew Michael was going to be first. Michael and I have been working on some projects with the support of Michael Banner and a bunch of you guys on this Zoom. And we get this. We totally get this. I'm like Michael Banner said, he's a investment capital junkie. I'm a deal junkie. My degree is in journalism, but I fell into real estate over 40 some years ago and I never left. So Michael Anderson, are you on mute?
No, it's not.
But I'm a fan. I definitely want to be a disciple of Michael Banner because I don't know capital. But one of the things I want to say is it's interesting. Michael mentioned the Crenshaw LAX TLD study that Metro created. I was the author of that study. And one of my frustrations is studies are done and they're never capitalized. And so here, what Michael's just presented is a method of implementing the things that the community has put effort in envisioning and just said after refinement, this is what they desire to see. And so one of my frustrations have been how they move forward. I also think, and I'm glad to see Metro's participation in here. One of the things I kind of wish we could push Metro to do is sort of be that community development lead to a certain degree, because we do not have tools in place to make that happen. And what Michael said critically is important is place-based economic development. That's where a vision, it's almost like master planning a community. Crenshaw Leimert Park has that opportunity based on those visions to make the density that works so that there's real economic development and growth. And so here it is, $20 million available that can be leveraged up to $100 million that can get this started. And then when you look at the depository capital that's in there, that helps small businesses be able to say, or the bankers say, oh, this community is growing. I can lend you more than $50,000, right? Because they see the economic growth. So my question is, how do we get this going? And how do we get mentored, Michael, to make this implemented in a way? And as teaming up with development corporations as well to do something large, as well as then you have a. That's my.
There we go.
Internet is going in and out.
So we are. So this is an example of, and some of you know me, I am trying to exit this part.
You can't go nowhere to this
of my life and become a cruise ship party junkie. In fact, I tell people that I got a new title, and it's a CFO. And most people think when I say something like that because of who I am, it's Chief Financial Officer. No,
Chief
It's
fun
a
officer.
goal of becoming the chief fun officer of my life.
I am with you on that one, Michael. But
And
one of
and
the
and,
things,
it's, and this whole activity is still kind of selfish because I live in View Park. What
Mhm.
happens on Crenshaw is important to me.
Yeah, yeah.
right,
And to the
exactly.
extent I can do something that helps accelerate the good things that should be happening on Crenshaw, I mean, I got time for that because
Mhm.
it just makes me have to drive don't have to drive as far
Mhm.
to have fun. I
Mhm.
can just go down the hill. And so we do see this proliferation of mixed use development that's happening on Crenshaw. It's happening on Adams. And it doesn't look like, in my mind, unless we have some significant economic problem, that it's going to stop. It may slow down, could speed up. But when you put more people and more density, they have to have goods and services. And so that's part of the underpinning of having a strategy that says, okay, so as Michael said, yeah, we got a lot of studies that we should do this, we should do that, we can do this. Great. Okay, so but who's tying this stuff together?
Mhm.
And I do give Metro credit that they thought about this in 2015. It's just like now it's taken a decade to get to where hopefully by the first quarter into the first quarter of next year, the bits and pieces of the entity, the capital, and those kind of things have all been put together. Because then what will happen is you roll out and go on the effectively fundraising campaign with financial institutions and say, look, the public sector has moved forward and says these locations are important. We would like you to work with this group because we have confidence in the group and we want to see some things change. The odd thing about this, though, is that the banks that are in the corridor, those 7 banks now, I think four of those 7 banks bank Metro,
Mhm.
Mm,
bank the
Mhm.
state treasurer's office.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
mm,
in the one hand, and if you think about, they are banking public agencies and public entities whose
mhm,
role it is to support their constituency, which is kind of us.
Mhm.
mhm,
I often ask the question, and I don't get very good answers. If you guys can help Metro sell $200 million worth of bonds or help the treasurer's office sell, you know, their bridge financing for the year, and that's $1 trillion. How come you're not talking to the other people in the treasurer's office who have the $1 billion that want small business stuff
Yeah,
to improve? It's your customer. So
yeah.
from a customer standpoint, you would think that they would be trying to satisfy all of their customers' needs. But if we don't make noise about it, in my view, they can say, well, nobody said anything. And because I've raised money before, in 2004, I put up $1 million our own money, and I raised $9 million from, big banks. And as I said earlier, they got back all their money
Mhm.
and they made money.
Mhm.
And I would have done it again, but we started to roll into 2008.
mm.
So the whole world came to an end in 2008. And this now is an opportunity to get back to that and say, look, and especially I think another thing that's important to realize is that with the current presidential administration and their vigor for creating chaos,
Mhm.
there's not, in my mind, some clear message that the quote unquote CDFI fund is going to not be challenged
Right.
to survive, for one.
Yeah.
And if it does, it's going to be in a kind of reduced capacity, which to me means this is the opportunity to have the direct conversations with the financial institutions about what your community needs are. Because, my view, a CDFI doesn't make any loan that a bank can't make.
Right.
It's just that they want to make them. In some cases, the bank doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Michael, as you were talking, it just reminded me, I started in the savings and loan business, and the savings and loans were set up to finance housing, right?
Mhm.
And they wiped them out. They wiped them out. And then which really affected our communities, because those were the organizations that were situated in our community to make loans in those communities. So I like all of this. I think that what we're saying and what we've been saying on the community briefing all along is we have to be the voice of our community. And as you can see, guys, we have the resources. We just have to stop working in silos, and we have to stop being afraid. We have to stop being afraid and saying we don't know, or they're going to say no. Well, if you don't ask them, how are you going to know they're going to say no? And if they say no, then you have to ask, help me understand that. Because if you're saying no, I need to understand why the answer is no. Michael Anderson, get off of mute.
Damn, you know me well. Does it help? Would it help the community to have a large project or a series of medium projects now where there's some development activity that could target this fund as something to go towards to leverage additional capital? And what I mean by that is, typically, my experience sometimes been when there's $100 million of funding opportunity, there's nothing showing the growth that creates the ability to access those funds while they're available. And by the time that gets figured out, the market's changed or something's changed where the funds, even though they're there, we tend to leave it on the table or it gets lost.
Well, Mike, I would say that one of the things that you just articulated is that when you have the public sector orientation in these things, becomes somewhat problematic, and you need more market orientation. Because, I mean, you can look at Crenshaw, there are large projects that have gone on Crenshaw. And it's not that the public sector's money's in them. So they happen because of the economics made some sense. And so from a larger context of, how we all speak about community, I mean, community to me is a collection of individuals that have a goal and objective. To the extent that you have alignment, which is hard to do in a community context to begin with. But if you have that alignment, then it's easier to talk about what a community want or need is. Individually, though, is where I tend to err on, okay, who are the individuals that have something that want to do something, and use those as building blocks? Because uh, the larger projects typically don't happen, especially if they are government induced. And a good example I could just throw out the Santa Barbara Plaza.
Oh God, yeah.
We're talking, what, 25 years?
Yeah.
30, 3-4 decades, 30 years.
And even Metro has its challenges of the stuff it sponsors to get it done. And I always make the joke, if you're under 20 years, you still got a shot. But that's deplorable to say that.
Yes, it is.
At my age, if I have to wait another 20 years for something, I'll be out of luck.
Totally. Michelle, first, before Michelle
So, Mike, I
starts.
say smaller is better generally. I think that way because the more smaller projects you get done, you can almost create the same notion of groundswell just by the number of activities, and assuming the numbers were the same. So you do one $100 million project, right? Or you do 10 $10 million projects.
Right.
I think you have less risk in trying to do the $10 million projects, because even if they not all don't get done, if you got half of them done, you're at 50 million in that case of deployment. To the extent you do one $100 million project and it doesn't happen, you're at zero.
Right. Thank you.
Michelle.
Mr. Banner, I'm excited about your Mentor Protégé program, and I want to know, how can smaller banks, I'm sorry, correction, how can City First Bank support your program, and how can we be a part of that MDI CDFI capital fund?
Okay, your bank is actually a good example of what I believe the target ought to be, because you are a minority depository institution and you're a CDFI. So City First is kind of ingrained in all of the kind of programmatic windows. And also your CEO, Brian, who I've known for years, was actually on the Project Reach OCC steering committee. So your bank has some working relationship with this. I think the other thing is that when you're small, and this is kind of my experience, having been a solo shop at one point in time, you don't have time to do everything. And sometimes new programs, new products, as an example, requires a learning curve that has to happen internally in a financial institution. And having been in big financial institutions and looked at this stuff, you tend to want to stay in stuff that you feel comfortable with. And so sometimes you end up with this kind of what I characterize as an economic business bias. I'm just going to keep doing the stuff that works because it's not broke. And you may
Yes.
not necessarily see a longer horizon where there's a legitimate opportunity. And so I talked to folks at City First and explained to them that even with the state program, I've got other banks of your ilk that are clients of mine that are Asian banks, quite frankly. They have gotten 30, $40 million worth of loans that they funded and which they thought they needed, belts and suspenders on. They got $12 million of deposits out of this state small business credit initiative money. What that means, $12 million comes to the bank, sits in an account that you're in control of. To the extent there's a problem with the loan, you don't give the money back until the problem's worked out. So it has some advantages. And sometimes it just takes people to slow down and understand makes sense to them. It's the example of my bank that I tell you they did $40 million worth of loan, and I've told them it took me a year and a half of educating and working with them to get that to the point. And it got to the point that, hey, Mike, don't tell anybody else about this stuff.
Yeah.
We want to make sure there's money left for me. I mean, that's exactly what happened. And any bank can do this. You don't have to actually even be a minority depository institution or a CDFI bank. Any bank can take advantage of this. However, you have to have people in the bank who want to take advantage of it. Is the simplest answer that I could get to you. And I'm happy to talk to you and anybody else at City First because I've actually tried to give them some business too, using this as a. And it goes back to Michael's point. If you can give people a transaction where they can see it and get it done, they feel differently about that because they can see what an outcome in, as opposed to a nice glossy published report kind of thing.
Um,
Thank you.
and it's my understanding, Michelle, that the DC branch of City First is a lot more aggressive in that area, and that's their key mission, is to make sure that the minority community, Black community, is taken care of. So, and I know when Delmy was at City First, when I first met her and she was, and the merger was taking place, I've been I've banked that myself and Recycling Black Dollars with Broadway Federal for over 25 years. So
Yeah,
it's
me,
my
me too.
family. It's my family home, and I trust them. And they're not in the newspaper, which makes a big difference for me and my money. Every time I pick it up, they're not in the newspaper. But what and I know we were supposed to be adapting some of what was going on in DC, and this might be that inroads to that. And then, Michael, the other thing is, and I think this is something that we all need to think about, is because Michael just said it. He wants to go off to be the CFO of his life. So do we all. But what only way we can do that is we have to reach down and bring in some young people to mentor, to put them in the positions or exchange our knowledge or pass the torch on to them. And I was at the gathering spot when Rachel was there speaking on Black capitalism, and it was a room. I was old. Me and myself and Renee were the oldest people in the room, and it was very obvious. But when I said to them, it's time for us to pass the torch, but we can't pass the torch without passing the knowledge and our ability to move within certain circles and provide them with those tools. And I think that's important in this mentor prodigy, is also grooming people that can do that. And I know the hardest part of the subcontractors, especially those trying to enter into that space, is how do I do that? I can't tell you how many times I consult with people, and it's easy to go get the certifications, but then I can line them up on my wall. But what do I do? How do I maneuver in that space? And there's some of us, Bianca is very successful, and there's a number of other people that have been very, very successful in that space, and can share their missteps and what they would have done differently if they were starting over to new companies that are coming out there. Because the one thing I say for us, we're too small. We think too small. This world is gigantic. And we get lost in the pool because we're too small. We think too small. And I know with my clients, I'm always like, no, let's rethink that. We can do that bigger. What are you talking about? That can't even feed you, let alone your whole family and the community. So what do you think about that, Michael? I think we're losing talent, and when one of us go with all this wealth of knowledge, then that's it. Like Michael says, it just goes nowhere because that other person is like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta go take care of me, or something else takes place. So how do we handle that part of it?
So, Crystal, I think that's a very important point that sometimes gets lost on the fact that there's a reason to focus on financial capital. There's a more important reason to focus on the human capital,
Mhm.
because it's the human capital and the expertise and the track record that financial capital will follow. And it's it's no mystery about, for me, why people talk to me in this industry. Because one, I've done a lot of stuff and I've got long track record. And the importance of then setting the table where somebody else can understand, okay, so this is what Michael did, this is how he did it. Is this a playbook that we should replicate? And we all, and in fact, my daughter's a good example. I could not convince my daughter to think about anything to do with banking, finance, and all that kind of stuff. She used to look at me like I was crazy. And I go, so, girl, who do you think paid all those big ass tuition checks at Georgetown? And how was I doing it? But, they have their own ideas about who they want to be. And I do think that the notion of this wealth gap discussion that's continuing to go on, that's one of the connectors, that if you want to have some wealth, you better understand numbers and finance, because even if you get the money and you don't know that stuff, it's very easy for you to lose it or have it dissipate. Uh,
Mhm.
but I do think we have to balance that, because what you see in the marketplace is everybody wants to train somebody or offer out training programs and all these kinds of things, which is important. But when it's not connected to the tools to allow you to execute and implement that knowledge, it becomes very frustrating.
Mhm.
And so part of this mentor protege thing is to tie the capital to some kind of evolving relationship that
Mhm.
makes somebody else better. And then as they get better, does that open opportunities for capital deployment to touch them? Because it's almost like coming under a good house seal of approval.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
tell people, oh yeah, that used to work for me. You should do as she says. Oh, okay. So you want a little bit of that, but being able to catalyze the human capital part of this is a realistic and daunting challenge, because we do have this kind of barbell of the pipeline of everybody looking to retire. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
who we turn it? No, no, I can't turn it over to you.
Right, exactly. You have to, and we have to really stop to think about that because we see that with the utility companies. You know, we had connections, now we don't. Right? There's only one SoCal Gas that really has still a staff of people that look like us. The rest of them have kind of no longer look like us, so therefore, trying to get into them is almost impossible. Here's one thing that I do know though, because I coach for a number of agencies throughout the city, and it's all about the money that they get. So when the grants go, then that there goes the programs, right?
Right.
And sometimes I see that they're working just for the programs and not really to make a change, right?
Results, right.
It's just to get that check, and so the commitment is not there to take it all the way through. Um, and they also, I see, and Robin, you in the same space that I'm in. I also see that they continue to play for the same players, right? So they don't look out for new monies to be able to be really committed to the program. But as a business consultant, that's what we do, right? We are committed to making sure that the business can meet all the needs that the banker is looking for or the project manager is looking for. And it's not predicated just on that. Um, and so I don't know how we fix that, but maybe there needs to be another. Maybe they don't need to be not total nonprofits. Maybe they need to be B Corps so that they can be do a little bit of both, be able to pull money in outside of being reliant on a funder, right, or a bank or someone who all of a sudden a new administration comes in and says you're not doing DEI, and so now you all fold because you're not doing DEI or whatever that is, whatever the flavor of the month is. Maybe we should think about that being a different kind of structure where you can drive your revenue as well as being able to pull in nonprofit dollars. So if the nonprofit dollars start to shut down, you still have a means of driving revenue. And then that also means now the nonprofit is thinking like a business and not a
I've had a
handout.
lot of nonprofit clients over the years, and help people start them. And I've got clients now that are like budgets of $20 million that were originally like 5 or 6 when I started working with them. So you could see how the provision of those services that they provide, it has to move out of the inefficiency of
Yes.
public agencies.
Correct.
Yes.
Now the question is, what do you do if in fact you are given the opportunity to do something with that? Because if you think a larger nonprofit, they can hire hundreds of people. Who are they hiring and where are they locating? Becomes the same kind of um, decision-making models. But there's one thing I would like to say, which I thought was interesting to happen a couple of days ago now. So, of all of the stuff we talk about, what should be done and how we prioritize things, you can see now that in the city of Los Angeles, it was the priority to go out and agree to spend $2.6 billion in renovating the convention center. It's not to say that the convention center should not be renovated. I just thought it was interesting in that the vote was 2 people dissented. And $2.6 billion is a lot of money. It's like we're talking about a huge homeowner equity loan for the convention center. And when I thought about it, and part of it influences me because I'm a longtime member of the Urban Land Institute. We have 2 annual meetings and all that kind of stuff. And so I go to a lot of convention centers across the country. And I thought, how is $2.6 billion going into the convention center going to have this income generation activity that serves the larger city? I could see how you can make a case that the central business district, downtown, et cetera, could benefit from that. But they already got
Right.
LA Live and Staples Centers, which at the time when they were done, Staples Center was $400 million. all paid for by the developer.
Mm-hmm.
So the priority message is the message that I think that we have to keep saying, look, this is what we need. This is what we care about. This is what we want to talk about, and how do we solve the problem. And I'm just hoping that people take away from this that a mentor protege model in the finance world could be an effective tool.
I think so, and that's our call to action, guys. I want you. I mean, this has been some eye opening, and should be giving you a sense of pondering. How can we make better what is here? We're in a very interesting place in history, and I really think the biblical verse that those that were in bondage will now rise to the top and take their rightful place at the throne, and we know who those people are. I think it's time for us to think differently. We have to really start being invested in us as Black people, not people of color, but Black people. And how do we take ourselves out of where we are? I mean, if you don't take anything away, if you don't take anything from the nightmare that we've been in, is look how these people galvanized and they came together, and they don't even agree with each other half the time. Half the time they're fighting and beating each other up, and we should allow them to just destroy themselves, because they will do that. But in the meantime, we just can't be sitting here on the sideline thinking that everything is going to return to where it was. It's not going to return to where it was.
Ever.
It is a totally different. But now you have a point where you have some say so. There are going to be some major changes after the outcome of all of this that's going on. One thing, the Constitution has to change. And so do we want input on that? Do we want input on who's responsible, who we're electing as our responsible representatives? We got to be more involved. And that's what Michael just said. We got to be more involved. We got to be more outspoken. We got to bring in young people, because they are doing what they need to do. Equip them with the tools. They have the energy. And if we teach them and share with them, we all were those people 40, 50 years ago. We're who we are today because somebody poured into us. So we got to do the same thing as well. I think that's our responsibility. We have kids coming out of college that are brilliant, and we're not mentoring them. We're not helping them. We're leaving them to their own devices. We may not want them all. They may not all want to be in banking, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that can change the world that we live in, especially here in California. And I think we should do that. And so that's my call to action to you guys, is really start to think about what it looked like Michael just said, hey, put it on the table and start to pan it out. Use AI. AI is an amazing tool to help you flush it out.
One of the things that Michael gave us as a call to action is to take the moment to look at who you're banking with, and look at their investor relations report, and look at their reserves, and look at one of the things we've talked about on this show, look at their community benefit agreement. Because that's what they told the public that they were going to do for your community. And then if you're not asking questions about that, it's not necessarily that they have all the answers, but you raising your hand, asking questions, makes them have to do something. It forces them to have to do something. Michael, this has been delightful. I think we need another session, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I want to be one of the disciples. I'm not the sharpest pencil in the box. I got a journalism degree, and I've been in banking for 40 years. I know enough to ask the questions, and I know enough when my gut tells me that I'm not satisfied with the answer to ask some more questions and to press. We have to not be afraid to press them on these things. And that's what Michael Banner has done all of his career. And Michael, to your point, both of my sons said that they were never going to be involved in construction. They were never going to be involved in banking. Ken works for AECOM and Jared works on the permit desk at the city of Long Beach, because that's all they were exposed to, right? They had to go to the ground breakings and the ribbon cuttings and the site visits and all of this kind of stuff. And so to your point, your daughter probably will come back around. She's using what you've shot you. She may not be using it in the way you see it, but she's using that information, because I know you. I know you. You poured in, and it didn't go to the bottom. It resonated. So again, we're pressed for time here, but I think we need you back again. We need to revisit this. You need to give us some written assignments. Let's follow up with some written assignments on some things that we can do. And this can be a project for the community briefing community. And then the one other thing, I want to thank Michael Anderson and I want to thank Bianca, because those two people always come on this show and drop nuggets and clarity on how they got to where they are. Both of them are struggling, everybody's struggling, but they're always willing to share. And I really, really appreciate that. And I think that, again, as Crystal always says, we operate in community, we all can get a lift.
Yeah,
Mr. Banner, you're fantastic.
Yes, I love you, Michael. Michelle Dot is going to be our guest next week from City First Bank. My cheers, my home away from home, where everybody knows my name. So we'll have her back next week. I want you all to have a safe weekend. We got some major things coming up. We got to vote yes on Prop 50.
Yes.
So I'm gonna put that, and I got a question I got a call the other day. They were frantic about Prop 79. So Emma is going to take this just for a minute. We're over a little bit, but we need to hear from Emma, because Emma and Roz are pulling together so we can be at least politically savvy,
right?
Because that's important right now, to be politically savvy. All right, Ms. Emma.
My phone is ringing like crazy. Thank you, Mr. Michael Banner. Your presentation was amazing. I want to speak with you afterwards and have a conversation about some of the things you talked about. So thank you very much. It was very informative. But real quick, we have a location for our town hall meeting.
Awesome.
And we thanks to Crystal, introduction to me with Dr. Rosie Milligan. And we're going to meet at the Consolidated Realtors building right there at 3725 Don Felipe. It's a nice space. Parking is free. We don't have to worry about anything. And that was one of the things that I really, really wanted to make sure that we are in a safe place, parking, no charge to anyone. So I'm looking forward to you guys coming. If you got your sample ballot in the mail, anybody?
Yesterday.
Okay.
Yep.
It came yesterday, and that is the only thing. Measure 50 will be on the ballot, and that's it. Now, people are talking about the other issues, and we'll talk about that at the town hall meeting. We're going to put emphasis on what's at hand right now, but there are other things that are very important regarding taxes and home grab, etc., going to be in the next election. So we hope to continue our town hall, and we are going to partner with the Consolidated Realtors. They have issues that they want to talk about, so we decided that we will work with them as well, so that everyone can. We need to purge some of the things that we're doing, even with the briefing. I talk about us all the time, and we need to make sure that we share information, get everybody involved, because it will make a difference. So that is what we're going to. And we only have 5 weeks. We're going to start next Wednesday, every Wednesday from 6 to 8. Similar to what we did at the town hall meeting. We'll get the flyers out. I know this is a late meeting. We don't expect a lot of people the first week, but hopefully going forward, 5 Wednesdays, that's all we have. So if you can support us, we would appreciate it. And we'll take it from there.
And if you will get me flyers,
Emma,
so I can get it out to Black Women's Network, and as well as the National Association for Black Women. I think we need to close the silos, guys. And so this is how we start doing that. Dr. Rosie, I'm sure she told you, Emma, Dr. Rosie appointed herself the mayor of South LA about 10 years ago. And every now and then she has to have a come to Jesus meeting with the Black folks. And so she put together a task force, and she assigned everybody to a position. And so now she's holding them to task, and it's for all the areas that are pertinent. So those are her town hall meetings. So she and I have been talking about us closing our our silos and all working together because it's all for the same purpose. So, but Dr. Rosie, she's a fighter. I don't know if
She
you
is a
guys know
fighter.
her, but that lady is, she's up in her 80s, but she ain't ready to go yet. So she is a fighter. And she's done some
Thank you for
amazing
that.
things. And so, hope you guys come out and get to meet Dr. Rosie because she's something else to
Yeah.
be met. She's a guru out there. Which, like you, Michael, she is a wealth of information, and she is not afraid of nothing.
Right. And we are actually partnering with them because they were there and they know so much, and there's so many things that they're doing that I would love to be involved with. So we're going to work with them and do the best we can to get this election, first of all, behind us.
And
But
then get ready for the one in 26 because that's
yes,
important.
exactly.
We got to stay blue, and so we got to be involved on the political space. We have to have our voices. We have to encourage and support and inspire. Unless we looking for another country to live in, this is it. This is what we got. So we need to make it work. I'm glad that worked out for you, Emma. I knew Miss Dr. Rosie will handle everything. She's just that person.
Yeah. We're going to do a lot of things. So Lord's will, and looking forward to it. So thank you guys and everyone that's here. I'm sorry I didn't stay on the call, but I was busy.
No problem at all. And is anyone here that's interested in being part of that, being part of this movement that we got going on, reach out to me and I'll make sure you get the contact information and put you on the mailing list so that you get the information as it's coming out. So, and this is in every aspect of our lives, our financial, our education for our children, healthcare, homelessness, home buyership, wills and trusts, you name it, we've addressed it all. So wherever your expertise lies and your passion lies and your concerns lie, there is a place for you to join up and be part of the movement, right? So I call Dr. Rosie my Harriet Tubman. And because that's the energy she puts out there. She's a Harriet Tubman. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Please come back next week so we can hear Miss Michelle and learn about City First Bank and what it's doing. And anyone, and then just meet the new people and continue to go out there and invite people to the community briefing. We do want this to be a large platform. We want it to be the voice of our community for a place that you can take away, and you can trust in the information that you're receiving. And then you get to network and build your own community to grow in your world. Okay. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Be safe out there. And we'll see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wednesday.